Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever found yourself questioning your own reality, second-guessing your instincts, or feeling like no matter what you do, it's never enough? That confusion, that self-doubt, is rarely an accident. It's often the result of a very deliberate set of tactics, a kind of playbook used by narcissists to gain control, maintain power, and keep you off balance. This playbook isn't written down anywhere, but it's frighteningly predictable. It's a series of strategies designed to manipulate emotions, distort truths, and chip away at your sense of self. From love bombing that makes you feel like you've finally found your soulmate, to gaslighting that leaves you wondering if you're losing your mind. These tactics work because they strike at our deepest human needs: connection, validation, and belonging. The brilliance and the cruelty of this playbook is that it doesn't reveal itself all at once. It unfolds slowly, almost invisibly, until one day you realize you're caught in a game you never agreed to play. What makes it even more dangerous is how universal these tactics are. Whether in a relationship, at work, or even within families, the same patterns repeat with chilling consistency. Tonight, we're going to shine a light on those patterns. Because once you can see the moves for what they are, the game changes. You begin to recognize the manipulation, the emotional traps, and the ways you've been pulled in. And with that awareness comes power, the power to set boundaries, the power to protect your peace, and most importantly, the power to step out of their playbook and back into your own life. Love bombing is often the very first tactic in the narcissist playbook, and it's one of the most disarming. It doesn't come at you like manipulation. It comes cloaked in affection, admiration, and what feels like extraordinary connection. Imagine meeting someone who seems to see you in a way no one else ever has. They remember every little thing you say. They shower you with compliments that feel so specific and personal, and they create the sense that destiny itself has brought you together. It's not just attraction. It feels like magic, like finally being recognized and valued in a way you've longed for. That's the brilliance of love bombing. It hits the deepest human desire to feel seen, cherished, and chosen. The early stages of love bombing can feel intoxicating. You might be flooded with constant texts, long phone calls late into the night, surprise gifts, or grand romantic gestures that feel almost cinematic. They may tell you very quickly that you are their soulmate, their perfect match, or that they've never felt this way before about anyone. Those words have power because most people want to believe in that kind of connection. It's the fairy tale we've been conditioned to hope for, the person who sweeps in and makes us feel special, unique, irreplaceable. And when someone mirrors back your dreams, values, and insecurities in a way that seems almost too perfect, you don't question it, you fall into it, because who wouldn't want to? But that's precisely what makes love bombing so dangerous. It isn't genuine love. It's strategy. Every lavish compliment, every sweeping declaration, every display of perfect attention is calculated to hook you emotionally and psychologically. The narcissist studies you almost like research, noting what excites you, what comforts you, what you long to hear. They build a mirror of yourself and present it back to you so you feel an uncanny connection. But what's really happening is conditioning. You are being trained to crave their validation, to become dependent on the high of their attention, so that later, when that attention is withdrawn, you'll chase it even harder. In this stage, you're not just feeling appreciated, you're being overwhelmed by a flood of attention that bypasses your logical brain. It's like being swept into a current too strong to resist. When you're constantly told you are extraordinary, beautiful, brilliant, or the only one who truly understands them, your sense of skepticism fades. You stop questioning their motives because the emotional payoff feels too good. And when others warn you to slow down or be cautious, you may even defend the narcissist, saying, "You don't understand, this is different. This is real." That's how effective the love bombing is. It silences outside voices, it silences your own doubts, and it convinces you that you found something rare. One of the hallmarks of love bombing is speed. Things move quickly, almost unnaturally so. You might find yourself in deep conversations about marriage, children, or lifelong dreams within weeks or even days of meeting. They push for commitment early, not necessarily in a direct way, but by weaving stories of your future together. Suddenly, you're talking about vacations you'll take, houses you'll buy, the life you'll share. This projection of a future creates a psychological bond that feels binding. Even though the relationship is still new, it feels like it's already established, almost permanent. The momentum leaves little room for reflection, which is exactly the point. The narcissist also uses intensity to keep you off balance. They may shower you with gifts or gestures so grand that you feel almost obligated to reciprocate emotionally. It could be expensive presents, handwritten notes, surprise visits, or constant affirmations of how lucky they are to have you. While these gestures appear loving, they are transactional at their core. Each one is designed to deepen your sense of obligation and to make you feel that you've stumbled into something extraordinary, something you must protect and nurture. This intensity becomes addictive, and before long, you start craving it. Another subtle element of love bombing is exclusivity. They might say things like, "I've never told anyone this before," or "No one has ever understood me the way you do." These statements make you feel singled out, chosen above all others, elevated to a role that no one else could possibly fill. It creates a powerful bond because it feels like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Who wouldn't want to believe they are the only one who truly matters to someone? But behind those words is the tactic of making you feel indispensable, which ensures that you'll tolerate more down the road when the relationship shifts into its darker phases. At its core, love bombing is not about love at all. It's about control. The narcissist knows that if they can overwhelm you with affection and admiration, they can bypass your critical thinking and bind you to them emotionally. And once that bond is in place, you are far more likely to ignore red flags, excuse bad behavior, and hold on to the memory of those intoxicating early days when the relationship starts to soar. That's why victims of narcissistic abuse often find themselves saying, "But it wasn't always like this." They're clinging to the high of the love bombing stage, hoping it will return, not realizing it was never real to begin with. What makes love bombing so effective is that it doesn't just play on vanity, it plays on vulnerability. It targets the part of us that longs for connection, for recognition, for the sense of being deeply known and accepted. Most people want to believe in grand love stories, in the idea that someone could be so swept away by them that they can't help but express it. The narcissist weaponizes this desire, turning what should be the foundation of healthy love into a trap. The aftermath of love bombing can be devastating. Once the intensity fades, once the compliments stop flowing, and the attention begins to dry up, you're left desperate to get it back. You may try harder, give more, sacrifice pieces of yourself to reignite that spark, but that's the game. The narcissist never intended for the intensity to last. It was merely a hook to ensure that when the devaluation begins, you'll already be too invested to walk away. That early flood of affection becomes the reference point you keep chasing, the illusion you hold on to, even when reality no longer matches it. Gaslighting is one of the most insidious and psychologically damaging tactics in the narcissist's playbook. Unlike love bombing, which overwhelms you with positive reinforcement, gaslighting works by dismantling your sense of reality, one subtle moment at a time. It is not always loud or obvious. It often begins quietly, disguised as concerned denial or even humor, but its impact is profound. At its core, gaslighting is designed to make you doubt your memory, your perception, and ultimately your sanity. When someone repeatedly convinces you that what you saw, heard, or felt didn't really happen, your grip on reality loosens, and you begin to trust them more than you trust yourself. The earliest signs of gaslighting can feel almost trivial. You might recall an event or a conversation, and the narcissist will insist it never happened or that you misunderstood. For example, you might say, "You told me you'd call last night," and they respond with, "No, I didn't." You're imagining things. At first, you brush it off. After all, everyone forgets details sometimes. But as these denials accumulate, you begin to notice a pattern. It isn't just once or twice, it's consistent. And it's always in their favor. They never seem to remember the moments that exposed them, but they insist with certainty on their version of events. That certainty is powerful because it collides with your natural self-doubt. Slowly, you start to question yourself instead of them. Gaslighting thrives on repetition. The narcissist doesn't just deny once, they deny over and over with unwavering confidence. Their conviction makes you second-guess your own memory. If someone is so sure and so calm in their denial, you begin to wonder if maybe you are wrong. This creates cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable clash between what you believe you experienced and what they are insisting is true. To resolve this discomfort, your mind often chooses the path of least resistance. You start to accept their version of reality because it feels easier than constantly fighting for your own. But gaslighting isn't limited to denial. It often takes the form of minimization. If you bring up something hurtful they said, they may respond with, "You're too sensitive," or "You're overreacting." These statements undermine your emotional reality. They shift the focus away from the narcissist's behavior and onto your response, making you feel defective for having feelings in the first place. Over time, you may begin to suppress your emotions, questioning whether you even have the right to feel hurt or upset. This emotional erosion is exactly what the narcissist wants, for you to mistrust yourself so deeply that you rely on them to define what is real, what matters, and what doesn't. Another layer of gaslighting involves rewriting history. Narcissists are skilled at retelling events in a way that casts them in the best possible light and paints you as the unreasonable one. They may say things like, "I never yelled at you, you were the one screaming," even if the opposite is true. They can weave these false narratives with such ease and confidence that you begin to question your own recollection. The danger here is that once you begin to accept their version of events, you lose your anchor to reality. Your memories, which should serve as a guide, become unreliable in your own mind. Gaslighting also often comes packaged with charm. After an argument where they've denied or distorted your reality, the narcissist may suddenly switch to being affectionate or playful, leaving you even more confused. This intermittent kindness creates a cycle of doubt. Maybe they're right. Maybe I did overact. The push and pull keeps you unstable, which is the exact goal, because when you're unstable, you're easier to control. One of the most damaging effects of gaslighting is isolation. As you begin to question your own reality, you may hesitate to confide in others for fear of being told you're overreacting again. The narcissist may even encourage this by suggesting that others wouldn't understand or that your friends and family are against you. In some cases, they'll directly discredit you to others, painting you as irrational or dramatic. This makes you less likely to reach out for support, which further deepens your dependency on the narcissist's version of reality. Gaslighting doesn't always appear in personal relationships. It can surface in workplaces, families, and friendships. A manipulative boss might deny making a promise or insist that a deadline was always sooner than you recall. A family member might insist that painful childhood events never happened, leaving you feeling invalidated and unseen. In each case, the tactic serves the same purpose: to destabilize your confidence in your perception so the manipulator can maintain control. What makes gaslighting particularly destructive is its gradual nature. It doesn't usually happen in one dramatic incident. It happens over weeks, months, or years. It's the steady drip of denial, minimization, and distortion that slowly erodes your confidence. By the time you realize something is wrong, you may already be deeply entangled in the narcissist's narrative. You may even find yourself apologizing for things you didn't do, or worse, apologizing for simply existing in ways that challenge their control. Gaslighting also exploits the human desire to maintain harmony in relationships. Most people don't want constant conflict. When faced with repeated denial and minimization, many will choose to give in just to keep the peace. But with each surrender, the narcissist gains more ground. You begin to silence yourself, avoid bringing up issues, and accept their behavior as normal. This is exactly what they want: for you to stop questioning them altogether. The psychological impact of gaslighting can be profound. Victims often report feeling like they are losing their mind, struggling with constant self-doubt, anxiety, and confusion. Decision-making becomes difficult because you no longer trust your judgment. Even simple choices can feel overwhelming when your sense of reality has been dismantled. This confusion serves the narcissist's agenda perfectly, because a person who doubts themselves is far easier to control than someone who stands firm in their truth. Gaslighting is not just about winning arguments, it is about dismantling your autonomy. By making you question your memory, your emotions, and your judgment, the narcissist positions themselves as the ultimate authority in your life. They become the one who decides what's true, what's valid, and what's worth remembering. And once that power dynamic is established, they can manipulate you in virtually any direction they choose. The silent treatment is one of the most chilling tactics in the narcissist playbook because it uses absence, not words, as a weapon. Unlike yelling, criticizing, or openly attacking, this tactic thrives on withdrawal. It's the sudden coldness, the refusal to engage, the deliberate shutting down of communication, and the calculated withholding of affection, attention, or even basic acknowledgement. On the surface, it might look like someone simply needing space or cooling off after a disagreement, but in the hands of a narcissist, the silent treatment is never about taking a breather. It is a calculated punishment designed to instill fear, guilt, and desperation in the other person, forcing them into compliance without a single word being spoken. The silent treatment begins with an abrupt shift. One moment, everything may feel normal, even warm, and the next, you're met with a wall of silence. Calls go unanswered, texts are ignored, and attempts to start a conversation are met with blank stares or dismissive gestures. There's no clear explanation given, which is what makes it so destabilizing. The silence leaves you guessing, ruminating, trying to piece together what went wrong. You replay recent conversations, searching for a mistake, a misstep, something you might have done to trigger the withdrawal. That uncertainty is the real power of this tactic. It forces you to turn the spotlight inward, to doubt yourself, and to bend over backwards to repair something you didn't even break. The silent treatment exploits the basic human need for connection. As social beings, we crave acknowledgement, communication, and validation. When those are suddenly stripped away, it feels like rejection at the deepest level. The narcissist knows this and weaponizes it. Their silence is not passive, it is active control. By ignoring you, they communicate that they hold the power to grant or withhold their presence, and if you want it back, you must earn it by conforming to their expectations. This dynamic places you in the role of the pursuer, desperately seeking reconciliation, while they remain in the position of authority, determining when and if you're allowed back into their world. Another layer of the silent treatment is how it creates an uneven balance of emotional labor. You're the one forced to apologize, to explain, to overextend, even when you're not at fault. The narcissist, meanwhile, invests nothing. They sit in silence while you scramble to mend the rupture. The more you do this, the more entrenched the pattern becomes. They learn that by withdrawing, they can get exactly what they want, whether it's obedience, an apology, or the reassurance that you'll never challenge them again. This conditioning can become so strong that you start preemptively silencing yourself, avoiding any behavior or words that might provoke another round of cold punishment. What makes the silent treatment uniquely cruel is its invisibility. Unlike overt abuse, it leaves no evidence, no shouting matches or bruises. To outsiders, it can look like nothing at all, just two people not talking, but for the person on the receiving end, it is deeply destabilizing. The silence is loud in its own way. It screams rejection, disdain, and superiority. It communicates that your voice, your presence, your needs are so unimportant they don't even merit acknowledgement. Over time, this can erode your self-worth, leaving you feeling invisible and insignificant. The silent treatment also often arrives without warning. It can be triggered by something as small as expressing an opinion that differs from theirs, setting a boundary, or asking for accountability. To the narcissist, these are challenges to their control, and the silence becomes a punishment for daring to disrupt their dominance. Because the triggers seem so unpredictable, you begin to walk on eggshells, carefully measuring every word and action in an attempt to avoid future withdrawal. This constant vigilance drains your energy and keeps you in a state of anxiety, always wondering when the next silence will fall. In some cases, the silent treatment is paired with other tactics to deepen its impact. The narcissist might flaunt their silence by being overly warm and engaging with others while ignoring you, amplifying your sense of exclusion. They may post pictures online that show them laughing or enjoying themselves, sending a clear message that they are fine without you, while you're left stewing in confusion and hurt. This amplifies the power imbalance and reinforces the idea that you need them far more than they need you. There's also the illusion of finality embedded in the silence. Unlike an argument, which at least signals engagement, silence suggests a complete cutoff. You don't know if the relationship is over, if they'll come back, or if they're gone for good. That uncertainty creates panic. Many people in this situation become so desperate to end the silence that they give in to demands they wouldn't otherwise agree to, just for the relief of reconnection. The narcissist understands this and uses silence as a bargaining chip, ensuring that your fear of abandonment keeps you tethered to them. The psychological toll of the silent treatment is severe. Victims often describe feeling anxious, restless, and even physically sick during these periods. The body registers rejection in much the same way it registers physical pain, and prolonged silence can feel like a wound that never heals. It eats away at your sense of security and belonging, leaving you perpetually unsettled. Over time, repeated exposure to this tactic can lead to chronic self-doubt, depression, and emotional dependency, because the only way to relieve the silence is to capitulate to the narcissist's unspoken demands. What makes this tactic particularly devastating is how it distorts your perception of love and intimacy. In a healthy relationship, silence might simply mean space or reflection, but under narcissistic control, silence becomes punishment. You start to associate affection and connection with compliance and silence with rejection. This rewiring of emotional association is powerful because it conditions you to prioritize the narcissist's needs over your own just to avoid the pain of being ignored. You lose touch with your authentic self as you mold your behavior around their moods, always striving to keep the connection alive. The silent treatment is also a form of erasure. By refusing to speak to you, the narcissist essentially denies your existence in that moment. It's a way of saying, you don't matter. You're not worth my time, my words, or my attention. For many people, this cuts deeper than over conflict. It isn't just being attacked, it's being erased. And that erasure lingers, planting seeds of worthlessness that can be difficult to uproot even after the relationship ends. Triangulation is one of the most manipulative and destabilizing strategies in the narcissist's playbook because it thrives on comparison, competition, and insecurity. At its core, triangulation is the deliberate act of introducing a third party, real or imagined, into the dynamic of a relationship to create tension, doubt, and rivalry. It is not simply about involving another person, but about using that person as a tool to keep you off balance, to provoke jealousy, and to reinforce the narcissist's control. By constantly pulling in someone else as a reference point, they ensure that your attention remains focused on them and that you never feel completely secure in the connection. Triangulation can take many forms. In romantic relationships, it often shows up as references to ex-partners, flirtations with others, or subtle suggestions that someone else is more attractive, more accomplished, or more desirable than you. The narcissist may say things like, "My ex never complained about this," or "You should see how ambitious my coworker is." These remarks may seem offhand at first, but they are carefully designed to plant seeds of inadequacy in your mind. Suddenly, you feel the need to prove your worth, to outshine this invisible competition, and to win back a sense of being special in their eyes. The brilliance of this tactic lies in how it shifts the dynamic. You stop focusing on their behavior and start focusing on what you must do to keep their approval. In friendships, triangulation can appear when the narcissist compares you to another friend. They might casually say, "She's always there for me in ways you're not," or "He just gets me more than you do." This positioning creates rivalry where none needs to exist, turning what should be supportive relationships into battlegrounds for attention. You may feel compelled to compete, to prove your loyalty or devotion, even though healthy friendships should never require this kind of contest. By introducing a third person into the equation, the narcissist diverts your energy away from noticing their manipulations and towards scrambling to hold your place in their hierarchy. In families, triangulation can be especially destructive. A narcissistic parent, for example, may pit siblings against one another by favoring one child while criticizing the other. They might say things like, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" Or, "Your sister never causes me this kind of stress." These comparisons don't just create rivalry, they fracture sibling bonds, ensuring that children remain divided rather than uniting against the parents' control. This kind of manipulation can ripple across entire family systems, creating long-term mistrust, resentment, and competition between people who should be allies. What makes triangulation so powerful is the way it exploits basic human fears: fear of rejection, fear of inadequacy, and fear of being replaced. By keeping you constantly aware of another person who could potentially take your place, the narcissist ensures you remain anxious and eager to please. The third party doesn't even need to be physically present. Sometimes it is only an idea, a story, or a suggestion. They might tell you about someone who admires them, exaggerate their importance to others, or fabricate interest from outsiders. Even if the third person is fictional or irrelevant, the insecurity it provokes in you is very real. The unpredictability of triangulation also keeps you hooked. One moment, you might be the favorite, basking in praise and attention, and the next you're being compared unfavorably to someone else. This hot and cold dynamic creates a sense of instability that drives you to work harder for approval. You never know when the narcissist will withdraw their favor or redirect their admiration toward another, so you remain in a constant state of hypervigilance, striving to secure your place. This is not love or connection. It is psychological warfare disguised as relationship dynamics. Another layer of triangulation is how it damages your trust in others. When the narcissist brings in third parties, it can create suspicion and tension not just between you and them, but also between you and the other person. In a workplace, for example, a narcissistic manager might praise a colleague in front of you while criticizing your performance, fostering resentment and competition between employees. In romantic relationships, they may deliberately flirt with others or mention how much someone else admires them, leaving you wary of that third person instead of questioning why your partner is provoking jealousy in the first place. This redirection of blame is intentional. It prevents you from holding the narcissist accountable and ensures the focus remains on your supposed inadequacy or rivalry. Triangulation also serves as a shield for the narcissist. By keeping multiple people competing for their approval, they position themselves as the central figure, the prize to be won. This not only boosts their ego, but also prevents unity among those they manipulate. If you're busy competing with someone else, you're less likely to compare notes, share experiences, or recognize the patterns of abuse. In this way, triangulation isolates you from potential allies, ensuring the narcissist maintains control over the narrative. The psychological toll of triangulation is profound. Constant comparisons erode self-esteem, leaving you feeling perpetually not enough. You may find yourself striving harder, changing your behavior, even sacrificing your own needs and values in an attempt to measure up to the invisible standard they set. Over time, this breeds anxiety, insecurity, and a sense of never truly being secure in the relationship. Instead of feeling valued for who you are, you feel conditional, only as good as your ability to outshine someone else in the narcissist's eyes. Another damaging aspect of triangulation is how it warps your understanding of love and connection. In healthy relationships, love is not a competition, nor is worth measured by comparison to others. But under the influence of triangulation, you may come to believe that attention and affection are scarce resources, always at risk of being given to someone else if you don't perform well enough. This scarcity mindset can follow you long after the relationship ends, leaving you with lingering trust issues and a distorted sense of what it means to be valued. Triangulation is effective because it doesn't rely on force. It relies on suggestion, insinuation, and the subtle manipulation of emotions. The narcissist rarely has to say outright, "You're not enough." Instead, they let comparisons do the work. They let the idea of another person hang over you like a shadow, keeping you on edge, always striving, never secure. It's a tactic that corrodes relationships from the inside out, turning what should be bonds of trust and intimacy into contests of insecurity and control. Projection is one of the most deceptive tactics in the narcissist's playbook, and it works because it flips the script in a way that leaves you questioning your own behavior instead of theirs. At its core, projection is the act of taking their own flaws, insecurities, or harmful actions and attributing them to you. If they are lying, they accuse you of dishonesty. If they are unfaithful, they accuse you of betrayal. If they are manipulative, they accuse you of being controlling. This tactic not only deflects accountability away from them, but also traps you in a cycle of defending yourself against accusations that have no basis in reality, draining your energy and shifting the focus away from their behavior. The genius of projection lies in how convincing it can be. Because the accusations are often delivered with such confidence and intensity, you may start to wonder if there's some truth in them. For example, if a narcissist repeatedly insists that you are selfish, even when you know you have been generous and accommodating, the constant repetition begins to wear down your certainty. You start reviewing your actions, asking yourself whether you've overlooked something, and in doing so, you move further away from recognizing the narcissist's own selfishness. That is exactly the point. Projection redirects the spotlight. ensuring that the narcissist never has to confront their own flaws because you are too busy analyzing yours. Projection often arises in moments when the narcissist feels cornered or exposed. If you call them out for lying, they may immediately respond with, "You're the one who lies all the time." The accusation comes so quickly and forcefully that it derails the original conversation. Instead of focusing on their dishonesty, you are now defending yourself against a claim that has been thrust upon you. This tactic creates confusion and chaos in discussions, making it nearly impossible to hold them accountable. By the time you've explained yourself, the original issue has been buried under layers of accusations and counterarguments, leaving you exhausted and no closer to resolution. Another insidious aspect of projection is how it exploits empathy. Most people are willing to consider the possibility that they might have made a mistake. When accused of something, a reasonable person tends to reflect, to ask themselves, did I do that? Could I have been wrong? The narcissist weaponizes this introspection, knowing that your willingness to self-reflect makes you more susceptible to their accusations. While you are busy combing through your behavior for flaws, they are free to continue their own unchecked. Projection, in this way, is a mirror that reflects their darkness onto you, distorting your self-image until you begin to internalize blame that doesn't belong to you. In relationships, projection can be particularly devastating because it erodes trust. If a narcissist is cheating, they may constantly accuse you of being unfaithful, demanding to know where you are, who you are with, and why you are hiding things. These accusations create paranoia and tension, but they also serve another purpose. They distract from their own betrayal. While you are busy proving your loyalty, they are free to continue their deception in the shadows. The more you defend yourself, the more entrenched their accusations become, and the less attention you pay to their actual behavior. Projection also thrives in conflict situations. Instead of acknowledging their role in an argument, the narcissist will accuse you of being argumentative, hostile, or unreasonable. If you express frustration, they accuse you of anger issues. If you cry, they accuse you of being manipulative. Every reaction you have is twisted and reframed as evidence of your supposed flaws. This constant distortion leaves you feeling like you can never win, no matter how carefully you approach conversations. Even your attempts to resolve conflict are used against you, reinforcing the idea that you are the problem. In families, projection can pass down generational wounds. A narcissistic parent, for example, may accuse a child of being lazy or ungrateful when in reality the parent is the one who fails to provide support or appreciation. These projections, repeated over years, can shape a child's identity, leaving them burdened with false narratives about who they are. Even in adulthood, the echoes of these projections can linger, manifesting as self-doubt, low self-esteem, and an internalized sense of unworthiness. Projection also has a way of silencing you. Because the accusations are often so shocking or offensive, you may find yourself at a loss for words. Being told you are selfish, cruel, or dishonest when you know the opposite is true can create a kind of mental paralysis. You are left scrambling to defend your character, to prove your innocence, while the narcissist sits back, having successfully shifted the focus. The silence that follows often works in their favor, reinforcing the idea that their accusations must have some merit if you cannot immediately disprove them. The psychological impact of projections is profound. Over time, constant accusations can cause you to internalize false beliefs about yourself. You may begin to feel guilty for things you never did, responsible for problems you didn't create, or ashamed of qualities that aren't actually yours. This erosion of self-trust is perhaps the most damaging effect of all. When you no longer trust your own perception of who you are, you become far more vulnerable to control. The narcissist becomes the authority not only on external reality, but on your internal identity as well. Projection is also effective because it taps into a universal human instinct, the desire to defend oneself when falsely accused. The moment you shift into defense mode, the narcissist has already won. You are no longer challenging their behavior. You are consumed with disproving their accusations. This dynamic drains your emotional energy and leaves you caught in a cycle of constant justification. Meanwhile, their own actions go unchecked, hidden in the shadows of the accusations they've hurled your way. At its heart, projection is about avoidance. The narcissist cannot tolerate facing their own flaws, so they expel them outward, planting them onto you. In doing so, they maintain the illusion of superiority and control. They never have to confront their dishonesty, their selfishness, their betrayals, because they've already convinced themselves, and possibly you, that those traits belong to you. This denial allows them to continue their destructive behavior without guilt, while you carry the weight of blame that was never yours to bear. Devaluation is one of the most jarring and painful tactics in the narcissist's playbook, because it comes on the heels of the intoxicating high of idealization. In the beginning, you were placed on a pedestal, showered with praise, admiration, and attention that made you feel like you were the center of their universe. It was the stage where you were convinced you had found someone who saw you, cherished you, and made you feel extraordinary. Then, almost without warning, the pedestal crumbles. The very qualities that were once celebrated are now criticized, mocked, or dismissed. The same person who told you that you were perfect now seems irritated by your presence, and the whiplash between these two extremes is what makes devaluation so disorienting. The devaluation phase begins subtly. Little criticisms slip into conversations where once there was only praise. Instead of complimenting your sense of humor, they might roll their eyes at your jokes. Instead of marveling at your intelligence, they may suggest you don't know what you're talking about. These changes might be so small at first that you dismiss them as mood swings or stress. But over time, the criticisms become more frequent, sharper, and more personal. You notice that you're being compared to others, that your flaws are highlighted while your strengths are ignored, and that your worth in their eyes seems to diminish with every passing day. The power of devaluation lies in its contrast with idealization. If you had been treated with indifference from the beginning, you might not have been drawn in so deeply. But because you experienced that initial flood of affection, your brain clings to the memory of what once was. You keep hoping it will return, that if you just try harder, you can get back to that magical connection. This hope keeps you tethered to the relationship long after the devaluation has begun. It is like an addiction. You are chasing the high of the love bombing phase, even as the reality around you grows harsher and colder. During devaluation, the narcissist systematically dismantles your self-esteem. They may point out your flaws in public, make jokes at your expense, or undermine your accomplishments. Where they once supported you, they now compete with you, diminish you, or act as though nothing you do is ever good enough. This constant barrage of negativity chips away at your confidence, leaving you questioning your abilities, your attractiveness, and even your worth as a person. Over time, you may begin to internalize their criticism, believing that you truly are inadequate or unlovable. Another hallmark of devaluation is unpredictability. The narcissist may alternate between moments of kindness and cruelty, keeping you off balance. One day, they may be affectionate, reminding you of the person you first met, and the next day, they may be cold and dismissive. This inconsistency creates confusion and keeps you hooked. You never know which version of them you will get, so you remain in a state of vigilance, constantly adjusting your behavior in the hope of recapturing their approval. This intermittent reinforcement is one of the most powerful forms of conditioning, and it ensures that you stay invested even when the relationship has become toxic. Devaluation is also used as a tool of control. By tearing down your self-esteem, the narcissist ensures that you become increasingly dependent on their validation. The more insecure you feel, the more you look to them for reassurance, even though they are the very source of your pain. This dynamic creates a vicious cycle. They hurt you, you seek comfort from them, and in doing so, you give them even more power. Over time, you may feel like you cannot function without their approval, which is exactly what they want. The tactics used in devaluation can be subtle or overt. Sometimes it's sharp criticism delivered with a smile, disguised as just joking. Other times it's blatant contempt, eye rolls, scoffs, or outright insults. They may compare you unfavorably to others, suggesting that you are less attractive, less capable, or less interesting than the people around you. These comparisons sting, but they also keep you striving to prove yourself, to show that you are worthy of their admiration. Once again, it is a game you cannot win, but one you feel compelled to keep playing because of the memory of how things used to be. Devaluation can also target your most vulnerable areas. If you have insecurities about your appearance, your career, or your intelligence, the narcissist will zero in on those and amplify them. They know exactly where to strike because they learned everything about you during the idealization phase. What once seemed like intimate knowledge shared between partners now becomes ammunition used against you. This betrayal of trust cuts deep, leaving you feeling exposed and unsafe even in the relationship that was supposed to offer comfort and support. In family dynamics, devaluation can take the form of constant criticism, favoritism toward other siblings, or a pattern of never acknowledging your achievements. A narcissistic parent may downplay your successes while exaggerating your mistakes, leaving you with a sense of never being good enough no matter how hard you try. In workplaces, devaluation might appear as a boss who initially praised your talents but now constantly undermines your contributions, taking credit for your successes while magnifying your errors. Regardless of the context, the goal is always the same: to strip you of confidence and maintain control through a steady drip of disapproval. The psychological toll of devaluation is immense. It creates cognitive dissonance, the clash between the memory of the idealization phase and the reality of the devaluation. You may find yourself oscillating between believing that the narcissist truly loves you and fearing that they despise you. This inner conflict keeps you trapped because you hold on to the hope that the person you first met is still there, hidden beneath the cruelty. Meanwhile, your self-worth erodes, and you begin to question whether you deserve better treatment. The longer this cycle continues, the more entrenched it becomes, making it harder to break free. One of the most devastating aspects of devaluation is how it distorts your perception of love. You begin to equate affection with struggle, believing that you must earn love by enduring criticism and pain. What should be unconditional becomes conditional, tied to your ability to meet ever-shifting standards. This distortion can linger long after the relationship ends, shaping how you approach future connections. Instead of seeking healthy, supportive relationships, you may find yourself drawn back into similar dynamics, chasing the familiar pattern of highs and lows. The devaluation stage is not just about tearing you down. It is about reshaping you into someone more compliant, more dependent, and less likely to challenge the narcissist's control. By systematically eroding your self-esteem, they create a version of you that is easier to manipulate. And while the cruelty may sometimes be disguised as humor, concern, or just being honest, its impact is unmistakable. The bright light of idealization fades into the shadow of constant criticism, leaving you grasping for validation that never truly comes.